Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're glad you're with us to stay curious. We are having technical difficulties. We just crashed for the fifth time in 2 days. We will try to do this again, and if we crash again, we're sorry, but we'll have to do our Apollo 16 story on the 52nd anniversary, not the 51st today. So, Marty, bear with us. Thank you for bearing with us, Marty. Marty, of course, worked on the lunar module. This is LEM 11 that landed on the moon on April 20th, 1972, about 9:30 at night, Eastern Daylight Time. And we're juxtaposing the Starship Super Booster flight yesterday, a 4-minute flight that's supposed to land on the moon. And to do that, we're going to show you some pictures of, by the way, this beautiful green screen behind me is a Paul Cowley original artwork called The Great Moment. I just love that title, Marty. The Great Moment, Neil Armstrong's first steps on the moon. You're kind of like sitting on your butt almost looking up at him on the moon. What a perspective. The great late Paul Cowley, who designed the Apollo 11 stamp. His son, Chris, a great friend of ours. We're going to see 3 artwork montages of Chris from his Apollo Heritage Collection. If we can stream it down the line, we're just going to show the pictures over my shoulder. 3, 2, 1, Marty, let's try it. There is Tony Achilles on the right and Daniel DeYoung on the left, having fun, literally goofing off in our Apollo gallery. Great friends of our museum. Daniel, an airline pilot for Spirit. Tony does a radio show in New York. And Daniel was at Boca Chica yesterday, Marty.
We're going to crash.
We're going to crash?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We're probably going to crash here.
Keep going, but it's getting the flashing.
Okay, we're getting the flash that we may crash. So let's try to show the image again and advance it. And there is Daniel DeYoung's photo of, he said he was 6 miles away. All right. Thank you, Marty. There's his launch. Beautiful launch there, Daniel. If y'all saw this, this is pretty good perspective. He said he was in the same hotel as the everyday astronaut. They're about 6 miles away. Great shot of the it disassembling, the what they call rapid unexpected disassembly, RUD. And then I believe, so that was 3 of them. There you are, weightlessness. Daniel, thanks for being a friend. He went 0G. And then this picture was a great shot, Marty, of he's got the super booster. You can see the engines. Wow, that's a great shot there. And at the top, it's so, I mean, it's just so diagonal. You hardly see the Starship on the top up there. So, Daniel, thank you for sharing that. Well, so far, so good, folks. Thank you for staying with us on Stay Curious. If we crash, we will not pick it up again. We'll have to have this fine-tuned a little bit more. The moon. When you look up at the moon, the full moon, the landing of Apollo 16 is in a region called Descartes, okay? And that's this region right here. Very bright part of the moon, and they thought it was volcanic. They being the lunar scientists that shows where we landed. As you see, it's in the upper, about right in the middle of the moon. All right, you see the line right there? That's the middle of the moon. So it's not too far from the middle of the moon, just to the right. Very heavily cratered area. And the Orion capsule, LEM 9, landed. And here were the astronauts looking very stylish there. Of course, you got John Young on the left and Charlie Duke on the right. Ken Mattingly is in the middle. All right, we still have Ken Mattingly and Charlie Duke with us. John Young passed away in January 2018. He's been gone 4 years at age 88. And, of course, he was born in San Francisco but grew up in nearby Orlando. And every day we hear about wrecks and delays on the John Young Parkway. So, but they're styling some 1970s mod clothes there, buddy. I'll tell you, I think I had that striped shirt of John's and the hip hugger pants there of Charlie Duke's. And speaking of globes there, I've got my Charlie Duke autographed globe right here. Eat your heart out, though it's a little bit faded because I've had it about 20 years. Bought it from the Kim Poor group there, Space, the Space Fest. All right, here is the lunar module on the surface of the moon in a very cratered area. This basically they got fooled that it was igneous rocks, and it was a lot like the Apollo 14 landing site. This was called Descartes after the great philosopher. They had a 6-hour delay in the moon landing because there was a gimbal problem with the command module. Let's see, Duke and Young spent 71 hours, just under 3 days on the surface of the moon. They drove the lunar module 16 miles on 3 different trips. They collected the largest rock brought back, 200, called Big Muley. All right, and they brought back 211 pounds of rock. The total is just under 1,000 by the 6 moon missions. And Mattingly, in the command module, spent 64 orbits by himself, all right? Of course, Mattingly was supposed to be the pilot, the command module on Apollo 13, and was scrubbed because he was exposed to measles. Charlie Duke, like I said, I've met several times thanks to Marty and his Grummies. A great guy. He can't be there this year. Wish he could, but he is the youngest moonwalker, or Harrison Schmitt is, and they're both age 87. Consider that, folks, when you got 4 moonwalkers alive, the other 2 being Dave Scott of Apollo 15, and of course 92-year-old Buzz Aldrin of Apollo 11. So beautiful look. I love these distant shots there. They're probably over a mile away. There's the guys again as I go backwards. Okay. Charlie Duke likes to autograph this picture of him on the moon. Location, location, location. I've seen that on many of our auctions there. So if you're lucky enough to have a Charlie Duke autograph, good for you. Any of the Apollo astronauts. I love the swag that we have. Sometimes we show some of that swag. Don't have that in this folder. I don't believe any of that. But the bumper sticker, make the Descartes scene with Apollo 16, kind of a play on words there, rhyming. A lot of the space workers got the replica of an American flag and the Florida flag flown around the moon with a thank you. You got mission buttons, pamphlets, and so forth, the usual thing that we love to sell on eBay or in our auctions, which we'll be talking about next week. The auctions are April 29th. Next Saturday is our auction. Well, to get off the moon, and just to show you that we have evidence of Apollo 16 on the moon, that is the descent stage that is left there, the bottom half of it, had an engine with the legs that landed on the moon. Then the ascent stage separated at liftoff and had to be, there's over 200 pyrotechnics on the lunar module, and probably over half of them, not sure exactly how many, had to work to all these explosive bolts firing, okay? And when we launched off with Apollo 15, 16, and 17, we had the lunar rover and its own camera so they could put a live feed of the actual liftoff. And there we got the 3210 on the moon. There's Orion lifting off. You've got all that Kapton foil flying in every direction there, all these colors, and then it lifts off cleanly. Now, if these pyrotechniques had not worked, that was a subject for what Marty said was his nightmare, okay? So, Marty, if you turn on your USIAC family microphone there, tell us a little bit about your bad dream you would have.
Well, first I'd preface that with a lot of people had bad dreams. Matter of fact, not just on Apollo, but I know it's on Space Shuttle also. But my specific dream was we were counting down, getting ready to launch off the moon, and the umbilical did not sever all the cables and the piping. And then the ascent stage was just tilt over to its, I'll say, starboard side, just crash into the moon. But I always wake up before it crashed.
Okay. Well, that was Joe Kingman, the Director of Quality Control for the Grumman Lunar Module. he said that he had frequent nightmares about the liftoff from the moon that involved the guillotine and one or more of the explosive bolts failing. In fact, could never, even years later, could still not bring himself to watch the footage of the lunar liftoffs, because he just envisioned the ascent stage lifted off, but still connected by miles of wire, dragging the descent stage along the ground as it tugged the lunar module down to the ground. Now, I'm going to show you what the schematic was here. Not going to interpret it too much. Have Marty this is just to show you how complex these were on there, and then we're going to give you what Charlie Duke's sensation was of lift off the moon. Marty, if you would, just any comment that this is all the subsystems that were involved with the pyrotechnics on the moon. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Marty, but here's some of the other locations of those. So can you just tell our Stay Curious listeners like Dave Stange out there, what were the more important points that had to go right and be exploded before they could lift off?
I'm glad you said the more important, because obviously they're all important. But the critical ones, obviously, is going to be the nut and bolts, I'll say the 4 quadrants that's holding the ascent and descent stage together, and the guillotine.
And here's a picture of the guillotine, and tell us what that was and how that worked.
All your cables and some piping going from the ascent stage to the descent stage went through the guillotine. And at separation, there were 2 knives that just went laterally across and overlapped each other and severed all the cables and all the piping.
A very important thing to happen. Now, was there just one guillotine, or was there 2?
1 guillotine and 2 sets of pyros and 2, let's say, 2 blades.
A lot of us think about the wires, but maybe you just don't think about the piping that may have gone through there too. Was that the coolant systems?
Yeah, you have water glycol flowing through all the electronic cold plates. So that had to be separate, obviously.
Very interesting, Marty. Well, here's what Charlie Duke, the lunar pilot of Apollo 16, said, that the pyrotechnics for the ascent stage separation gave him a brief pause. In other words, his heart jumped as he and John Young lift off the moon. He said, quote, "When the circuit interrupters fired, then the 4 interstage bolts at the corners were sheared, and finally the guillotine sliced through the umbilical and water lines. The entire ascent stage suddenly dropped an inch or so." And Charlie Duke said, "Oh, shh," but did not have time to finish that thought as the ascent stage engine fired and abruptly took them away from the surface back to Ken Mattingly, awaiting their return aboard Casper, the command module orbiting the moon. I've never heard any of the astronauts talk about that little drop before the up on there. And Marty, had you?
No. First I heard about it was you telling the story about Charlie Duke.
Yeah, kind of interesting there. Always 51 years later, you're still learning more about our fabulous Apollo moon landings. We put the moon video on last night. You can go watch that on YouTube. Charlie's is a very animated person, and you can hear him and John Young just kind of, "Oh, right, we're there. We're good job. You got it, John, baby. Just keep going." I don't think he said John, baby, but very excited, animated guy. And we're going to see a few pictures here at the event he was at last year at the Grumman reunion. When it got up and looked at Casper, they had, Marty, what are we looking on the back side of the ascent stage there that's wrinkled?
Yeah, something that wasn't really expected, but when the ascent engine fired, the flame trench, if you will, just came around and came up the rear end of the ascent stage, where all of our electronics were, not all, but a vast majority of electronics were back there. But apparently didn't do any damage, just damaged
It just looks worse than it actually is, just sort of like getting a fender bender, maybe, that doesn't hurt the performance of the vehicle. Well, last year they had a big 50th anniversary, and we made a great friend in Delaney Yancey. Saw that young lady and her brother and her mom at the Urie's night last weekend. Here is Delania. Hi, Delania. And she sent us some pictures last year, Marty, the 50th anniversary at Huntsville, at the U.S. Rocket and Space Center there in Huntsville. That is von Braun's office the way he left it when he passed away in I think he died in 72, actually. And there's Delania. We hope to see more of her. There is the parachutes coming down to emphasize the beautiful. This is so gorgeous. This is my favorite display of any spacecraft, is Casper sitting there beautifully, like a diamond, a jewel in a jewelry's case there at the U.S. Rocket Center in Huntsville. That is command module number 113, I believe. Confirm that for y'all. It's going to correct me. Yep, CSM 113. All right. Isn't that beautiful, Marty? We're going to see that on a road trip here one day, buddy.
Yeah, we keep talking that, Mark. We have to do it.
Yeah, we do. Well, we'll just get some. You and me both get these. Got 2 events behind me. We'll just jump and. But there's a rover mock up there with it in the background. What a beautiful display! I'm literally standing under the command module of the Saturn V that they have horizontal laying down. Of course, they got some space suits and a moon rock well displayed, and show you the display of the how things worked. There's again Casper looking inside of the command module there. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous display. And there is the Saturn V. You see the American, or the orange parachute in the back. This was the dinner they had. Apollo to Artemis last year they were talking about. And we hope many of you have seen this. If you haven't, you'll want to. About then it's less than 3 hours to Chattanooga if you go east. So another beautiful town to visit. There is Charlie Duke talking at the 50th anniversary gala they had. And then we jump back to Mark Usiak on the right, and we've got Jack Lausma on the left talking to Charlie Duke and his wife there at the event that we had at Zorella's, the Grumman Union group last year met there. So privileged to meet the man. Marty, you had a great conversation with him there. I'll bet you remember what he was explaining to you.
Yeah, I asked him about why Apollo 11 missed their primary landing site by about 4.25 miles. And he was explaining that using my terminology, lumpy gravity.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
All right. Interesting there. And then I don't have many selfies I ever show with any of the astronauts. We see one almost every day, Marty, going to the Space Center. But there is Charlie Duke. What a nice guy, friendly guy. And, I got to thinking, anyway, I'll think about that here in a second there. But this is a great point to show the great artwork of Mr. Chris Calley. Chris, you'll be watching this probably with your beautiful daughter at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. But he has to go through Ohio to get there, folks, unless he takes a boat. So I told him that the Buckeyes will treat you good as you go through there. Our gas is cheaper, I think. Anyway, there's a beautiful Saturn V launch. A lot of Easter eggs in there. That's Charlie Duke, black and white on the left there. What a great artist, isn't he, Marty? He's got a piece of artwork he's going to, in your silent auction, I believe. There, of course, JFK. That's, again, the astronauts of Apollo 16 featured there on the right, a moon view there. And then, of course, John Young, Von Braun, and President Kennedy all depicted there with the mighty Saturn V. What a beautiful blue background there, Chris. These montages are really cool. And I thought, man, he's got a smiley face there, I see. The picture that we showed you there with the pants that Charlie Duke's got on. And I thought, man, I need to show a picture of Chris Calley and Charlie Duke together. And I went to his website, and I really couldn't find one I liked. And I'm going, man, I can't find a decent picture of Chris with Charlie Duke. So I just Googled Chris Calley, Charlie Duke in there, and this popped up. Oh, yeah. There he is with Charlie Duke and Brian May, the doctor of astronomy that's the lead guitarist for the rock group Queen. But I'm as excited to see him with David Eicher, longtime editor-in-chief of Astronomy magazine. All right. Didn't know you knew David Eicher. I've met David at one of the events. He'd never remember me, but and I mean just old chums there, just hanging out there with the rock and roll god Brian May of Queen, who is a very avid amateur astronomer, and particularly he created Asteroid Day, January 30th, that we're going to promote with our good friend Alex Carl, the ESA Capcom. So you can't outdo Callie any way you try to, Marty. I'm going to give up there, but appreciate all your friendship there. What a cool picture. Chris has a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to having fun with him. Bill Whiting, look at that picture, buddy. Mike Madero's watching, or Medrano. Steve Hammer's watching, and Chris Kelly says, "Hold my luggage." Is that what this?
No, that's a person.
Oh, that's a person watching. Hold my luggage. I mean, I'm Chris Kelly's name. Then there's Mark Usiak, who does know how to hold Chris's luggage. I'm just a trainee. Dave Stange is there with his 3-year-old grandson. He said we made his granddaughter cry yesterday, Marty, when we went offline. So she's a loyal Stay Curious fan. Thank you, Dave. Cynthia Rossi. All right. And Carlton Bailey. So we'll be calling CB over the weekend as I got some time free to hang out and maybe go get a bite to eat there, CB, and talk some Godzilla stuff. So, all right. What else we got, Marty, here? Oh, to go out for today, we wanted to just let everybody know how the American Space Museum was founded with the Space View Park in creating a homage to our Mercury, Gemini, Apollo astronauts. The only place in the world you can put your handprints on Charlie Dukes right there at Space View Park. I'm going to prove it to you. There's Ken Mattingly's handprints there. There ain't another place in the world where you can lay your hands on there. Most of the time, Marty, when you put a handprints on an astronaut, what do people say a lot of times?
Well, they have small hands.
Exactly. And a lot of them are small people, but that doesn't mean they have to have small hands. But there is John Young's hands there. Yep. Apollo 10, Apollo 16 he's got there on there, and the picture on there. And those names are space workers that gave us $100 to build this park. And there's Charlie Duke's picture, his handprints there. And his hands pretty much fit mine, as I recall, being in there. So, Marty, one of the moon rocks that I've had a pleasure to handle, is this white one from Apollo 16. That's my good friend Paul Lewis in the background, who was privileged for decades to have this rock in his pocket for his outreach at the University of Tennessee. Every time I saw Paul, which was maybe several times a month during a period of time, I'd say, "You got it with you? You got it with you?" He says, "You've seen it so many times." I said, "I want to hold it." All right, a piece of the moon right there, folks. Just before I put it in my pocket and ran for the hills. So, everybody, we thank you for bearing with us to get this issue of Stay Curious out, number 799. I guess we were humbled by not doing one yesterday. We thought it would be 900. So, with the great Paul Callie's work behind us here, the great moment. Just ponder that as you look up at the crescent moon slipping into our skies over the weekend, and think about the men, women, and people like my friend Marty Winkel that put humans on that moon, and we've not been able to do it for 51 years since. So, Marty, thank you for getting through it. Everybody, thank you for watching us on Stay Curious. We will solve our little computer problems, I promise, and be back next week with another slate of Stay Curious episodes. Until then, I'm Mark Marquette saying we can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.